What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 4 different press releases that all wide receivers need to learn. Let's get started. Now, before we get to this video, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you would like 200 plus wide receiver drills that you can do with the exact sets and reps all broken down for you and all drills organized into categories like route running, press releases, catching, the works, check out that very first link in the description below. You can get access to all of that content, 5 new drills uploaded every single week for you guys to learn from. So again, if you want 200 plus wide receiver drills, check out that very first link below. Let's get back to this video. All right, guys, now the first drill that we are going to be talking about is something called a step back split release. So this release is going to be great when you're going up against a more physical type DB who's right up on the line of scrimmage and is not giving you any space. So how this video is going to work is I'm going to kind of break down when to use the release, and then I'm going to talk about the technique behind this release. So like I said, right up on the line of scrimmage, you're lined up here, you got a DB crowding you, don't have much space, but you need to be able to get off the ball fast and you need to create some room for yourself. So everybody, I'm sure, has heard at one point or another of something called a split release. So a split release is essentially exactly how it sounds, where your front foot goes out and your back foot comes up and you come to balance. You pause for a split second trying to react off the DB. If he shades to the outside, you take the inside, he shades to the inside, and you take the outside. So this specific drill is kind of the same thing, but you step back off the line of scrimmage. So he's crowding you, rather than stepping back and having your feet be super narrow, and then you have to get up into a move, which wastes a lot of extra time. What you would want to do is you would want to step back and split, getting to a position of balance so we can react off this DB. If he wants to lunge at us, we're in a powerful position, balanced position, where you could get hands off and go, or you create some space for yourself. Maybe he reacts one way and we could take off and split the opposite. So the biggest thing when you got a DB who's right up in your face crowding you need to create some space for yourself, and this step back split release is exactly what you want to do. Make sure when we do this, fellas, because if he's crowding you, he's probably going to be pretty physical. So if you step back and you're very narrow with your feet, that's a great way to get knocked off balance. So it's split, let's come to balance, give some space between me and the DB, and now I'm going to show you how this thing is going to look full speed. All right, guys, so this next press release that we're going to be talking about is something called a split reaction release, okay? So it's still building off of that same split release that we did, but this is something you would want to use against a DB who likes to be patient, right? So a lot of times when we come up to the line of scrimmage, everybody's afraid of that DB who's in your face, like we were mentioning, who's real physical, wants to get hands on us. However, the more disciplined the DB is, the more patient he's going to be. He's not going to lunge at you every single time. That is actually a form of unrealistic press coverage, because when a DB lunges at you, what happens? He loses his base. He's supposed to keep his base and stay patient, keep some cushion between the two of us if he's playing in something called catch technique. So that's what this drill is going to be for. This release is going to be for. So you're going to be doing the same type of split release. This DB's lined up head up, maybe a yard off, maybe 2 yards off. So you're going to split. Now, when you do this split release, you can do a couple things off of this. That's why it's a reaction release. If that DB starts to inch back and keep some cushion with you, nobody said, like let's say for example, you're running a fade route. Nobody said that you have to do this split and then just take off and go run the fade. Like that's the only move that you can use. You can add elements to the split release, which is why I love the split release, because you're getting to a balanced position where you could react and do multiple things. So like let's say for example, the DB starts to inch back, you do this split, we close the space with him and give him a move rather than split and just run around, because that's what he wants us to do. If that DB is gonna stay patient, let's say he's lined up head up, you do the split and you just take off and run. He's just gonna meet you right at that sideline and squeeze you all the way, or meet you right at that like meet point, if you will, and squeeze you all the way to that sideline and not give the quarterback any space if we're running a fade. So you want to eat up that cushion. Anytime that there's a gap between you and the DB, you want to close that gap and you want to close that space. So that's what this release is for. Now you might ask, well, what if he's sitting like a yard away and you do this split release, but he stays a yard away? Then we can make a quicker move and then get up into the route. That's the great part about the split, is you can react either way. Playing the receiver position is just as much about having a plan off the line as it is about reacting. So I'm going to show you a variation of this release, full speed. All right, guys, so now we're going to be going over another release that you would want to use when that DB is crowding you right up on the line of scrimmage, is not giving you any room to breathe. So that is going to be something called a lateral crossover step. So we talk a lot about using a crossover move off the line. I'm going to show that release as well when explaining this, but this is a more of a release where you don't have like necessarily space to close with the DB. He's already right up on the line. He's not giving you any space. There is no space to close with him. So we have to make him miss, but sometimes you have to make this guy miss laterally. So it's It's very similar to a split release, but it's more of a predetermined move, if you will. So like, let's say for example, you come up to the line, you got a DB who's right up on the line of scrimmage, right up in your face, right? So let's say this DB, for an example, is inside shade. This is a different example. Inside shade, maybe a yard off from you, and let's say you have to go run like a comeback route, 15 back to 12. If he's inside shade about a yard off, you could use this crossover move where you go 1, 2 and attack him, but you step more vertical. You're stepping into his cushion and closing that space with him. So what we have to do when he's not giving us that cushion and not giving us that space is we have to make him miss laterally. There's no distance to close, so that's what this move is going to work. So the lateral crossover is you're going to step more at like a 90 degree and push back at a 90 degree. So you're going to, instead of going 1, 2 at a 45, almost like a rocker step at the top of the route, you're going to come off the ball and go 1, 2, lateral, sell with the upper half, stepping outside of his frame or threatening his leverage, then get up into that comeback route. The distance of the DB is what dictates the release that I choose. So I'm going to show you how this release is going to look full speed. There's a great release to use when that DB is right up in your face and not giving you any space to move. All right, guys, so this next release that we're going to be going over is something called the hesitation slide diamond release. So this release is a great release that you can use when you're running a slant route, a 5-yard in, but it's a later developing 5-yard in and slant. We're going to talk about that later as this video goes on, but it's when you want to use this when the DB is inside leverage. So let's say you got to line up off the line, and let's say you got a DB inside shade press, maybe a yard off, maybe right up in your face. Nonetheless, his leverage is to the inside. When it comes to picking releases and when it comes to using releases, you have to understand that the DB's leverage dictates what I do off the line. So when he's inside leverage, that tells me that he's trying to prevent the inside route. He's trying to prevent exactly what I have in this case, which is a slant. So a lot of receivers will just try to run, but that DB is going to do whatever possible to protect his leverage and not give up the slant. So he'll force us to the inside, he'll reroute us, and that screws up spacing, but not only timing with that quarterback. So what you would have to do is if I'm the DB here, let's say a receiver's lined up here and I'm inside shade, you want to try to attack his outside shoulder to get him to flip so we can slip underneath. Now, when you attack his outside shoulder, we have to sell vertical. We have to make the DB think that we're running a fade. So you got to run hard, you got to have good body language, and you got to run in good stride. All of those things is what will get him to open up. Now, another way that you could build off of that is using other releases that you have used prior to in that game specifically against that DB, or releases that you've maybe showcased on film. So I'm sure you guys have all seen like Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson do that little slide and they take off and go run that quick fade, especially Devontae Adams, who's got some of the best releases in the game. Now, we could use that to our advantage, but you only want to use this if it's a later developing play, because this does take a little bit of time off the line. So what are later developing plays? Let's say you have a 5-yard in and maybe you're a backside route. Quarterback's looking left, comes back right and hits you. Maybe it's an RPO slant. So you have some extra time. The quarterback's footwork is a little bit longer. But if he's just catching it and throwing it, you got to come up with something quicker. So how you would do this? Make it look exactly like that slide. I like using a little punch step with my front foot. I jab and I slide, 1, 2, 3, slip back underneath on a diamond release. I'm going to show you how it's going to look full speed, but you want to have that tempo. You want to slide and go just like it's that fade, and you put the brakes on right on that third step. I'm going to show you this is going to look full speed. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and would like 200 plus wide receiver drills, all broken down with sets and reps and put into categories for you, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. I'll see you guys next time.